Okay, my name is Lucy Spencer and I'm the Executive Director here at Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa. Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa has been around for the last 25 years, where we have been serving immigrant women who have come into this country who are in need of various types of services. We have the crisis intervention service, the counseling, the language interpretation service, the settlement and integration, the program for children who witness violence, a number of other activities that we develop in response to the need that these women who come to us have. And we have been offering these services over a number of years. We continue to expand based on needs and based on the funding that we receive.
Okay, my name is Joan Gullen, and I'm currently a life member of the IWSO board. But I go back to the very beginning. I'm now 83 years old, but I'm still active on the board. So a lot of my work was in the community, and it was in that role that I was chairing the Regional Coordinating Committee to End Violence Against Women, which I was very instrumental in starting as a coalition to keep the focus on the issue of violence against women. And it was a model that was to work from the bottom up, not from the top down. And it survives to this day.
My name is Mechthild Meyer, and I became the coordinator of the Immigrant Women's Center of UCISO in 1985, together with Lucia. And at that point, there were no services available for immigrant women who had been abused. So as a small program, we started working together to create services.
At that time in Ottawa, as Mechthild mentioned, there were really no services specific to immigrant women. There were very few services for immigrants, period.
My name is Diana Abraham, and back in the day when I worked with IWSO, it was called IVMW, right? So that was in 1989. My role with them was because I was a senior consultant with the Ontario Ministry of Citizenship and Culture, is what I think it was called then. And the program that I worked with was one that was designed to provide, at that time we called them cultural interpreter services to women who were victims of domestic violence.
My name is Louise Atkins, and at the time when I first became involved with Immigrant and Visible Minority Women Against Abuse, which was what their original name of the Immigrant Women's Services, I was a funder with the Ministry of Community and Social Services in Ontario. And one of my colleagues from the ministry was involved with the group just then. Her name is Zina Al-Gadat, and she was very important in the beginning to understanding how women who were from different cultures and different parts of the world needed dedicated services, who would recognize they had not only crisis counseling needs in situations where they're experiencing abuse from their partners, but also that they needed cultural interpretation services, which is a kind of translation service, because many of them were not particularly fluent in either English or French.
We began in 72 Holland. It was a little house, and we never knew that there was going to be so much demand for our services. And I was working part-time, but I always was full-time, because at the last moment when I was leaving, there was somebody who needed to go to a shelter and they didn't speak English very well. And so I remember we were there all the time.
But at the time, it seemed like a great place because it was just a house. So if there was a kitchen, there was a living room, there was a place, there were little places people could... If a woman walked in there, she didn't feel she was walking into somebody's office. It didn't look like she was walking into somebody's office either. It looked like she was just visiting somebody's house.
But at the beginning, it was a lot of public education. We went to schools, we went to immigration offices, we went to Ontario Works, where sometimes people come at the beginning, financial help, We went to everywhere, and then we talk about domestic abuse and all that, and how it was a crime in Canada and all that.
and all the services that we provide.
My immediate thought was, well, interval house. The services and shelters that were relatively new at the time to try and get women's services. Unfortunately, women didn't speak English, didn't feel always very comfortable with some of the, what at the time were fairly strong feminist philosophies of some of the shelters, expressed perhaps in a way that wasn't as nuanced as they might have become over the years, and didn't always want to have the choice of having to take certain actions that they feared might put the lives of their partners in danger. They just wanted them to stop abusing them. They didn't want them to be deported back to Salvador where they would be killed. So those were some of the dilemmas that the women were facing.
Well, starting any new organization comes with its challenges. We identified a need in the community, and we decided to work with other women in the community to address these particular needs. So going after funding a new organization without any history or track record to go forward and to access funding, of course it's going to take us a while to do so, but we had the support of the Ottawa Community Immigrant Services Organization, and we had the support of many of the other representatives from the various organizations in Ottawa that lent some credibility to us, a small group, in trying to access the funding.
I think the challenges with the group were similar across the province. One of the things was being able to recruit individuals who had the necessary linguistic skills. The challenges for the ministry with that is this was the first time this was happening in Canada in a lot of ways. And we had to figure out ways of how do you assess people's language abilities. And that was that was something then some tools were developed to do that. And they were actually developed by another organization in Ottawa who worked with the ministry to do it. And we did it first in Arabic and Spanish.
The main challenge, of course, was to develop trust in the immigrant community to use our services, because as you could appreciate, it's difficult enough for a Canadian-born woman who runs into a violent husband, but for a woman who is very much part of her own community and hasn't been here that long, it's extremely difficult to leave, because she's leaving her community as well as her husband very often.
We did our best to put people in touch with resources and with assistance and with help. I had women here staying at my house when they had to flee from their partners, that kind of stuff. But basically it wasn't really resolving the problem. So the need was that there were, as in any community, abused women and children. The existing services, both the mainstream services that were as receptive or unreceptive as they had historically been to women's needs, and the immigrant-specific services weren't really hitting the nail on the head.
The women's program was within a settlement organization that the settlement counselors had to help not only the women but also the husband. So, and that for sure created also a situation that was not safe for the women, and probably also not safe for the settlement counselors, because there was obviously a conflict of interest, who to serve, who to support. And the settlement workers were also, like many of them, were very supportive of women's issues. Some felt that the family was the most important and keeping the family together was the most important, and not maybe knowing enough at that point how dangerous that was for the woman.
The major challenges was, of course, financial, right? But we did a lot of fundraisings, and I guess today this is the same, because money is very important. But at the same time, like, it was also volunteers, a lot of volunteers that give a lot of time for the organization. A lot of new students who finish school, like social work and volunteer.
I think there has been always a mix, like a strong volunteerism, like there were women involved who were not paid, but there was also from our side a very strong push for, especially for immigrant women, to actually get recognition for their work that they were doing and get paid actually, because that was part of our philosophy at the then Immigrant Women's Center, that was probably for most of the women the most important thing, to get paid work in this country.
You know, it plays a pioneering role or a lead role in a lot of different ways in terms of being out there on the front line and seeing what the needs are for the women, right? And I know that's what they do, and so it's always a question of looking for emerging needs, figuring out where you get the funding from to do it and how do you put it in place. And I think they've done a good job doing that.
IWSO has a lot of friends out here, and that one of the ways that the network of services for abused women and their kids can be strong is if they can keep working all together, because it's a broad social issue, and we have found that through the networks, by working together, that was a big part of why IWSO came into being. The vision, the dedication, and the understanding of the diversity. But I also know that when IWSO became well established, they also were then able to turn around and provide support and extra solidarity with the other services. So we don't allow this issue to get marginalized at the margins of society, but it stays mainstream.
What motivates me to do this work? When I look at women who come into the organization, and I can just make reference to one particular family that came here with the suitcases and a couple bags, garbage bags of clothing, and the mother herself did not even have anything to give her children to eat, and they were all tugging on her. They were very little. I think they were all under 5, and I watched that woman, and I watched her struggle that day, because it was after 5 and we were here trying to find her a place to stay for the night with the kids, and then her concern was what's going to happen to me and my children. And we were successful in getting her place, and the workers continued to work with her. She found affordable housing. The kids have grown, and one day she came to the office, and I passed her out in the hallway, and I just said a casual good morning and went along. And I happened to walk back through the hallway. She was still waiting on a worker, and she looked at me and she smiled and she said, "Lucia, don't you know me?" And I knew the voice, but I could not figure out who the person was. And I stood and I looked at her, and then she smiled. And when I realized who it was, I was really surprised. There was such a transformation in that woman that day that I said, that's why we are here. That's why we are here. There are many more like you, and we want to continue to help many more like you. And that's what motivates me, and I think that's what motivates the staff. When you see a woman come to us broken, she thinks her world has fallen apart and all is lost, and then a couple months later, you see her, the beauty shining from within, then you know it's worth it all. It's not an easy struggle, it's difficult on occasion, but when you look at the lives that have been spared, when you look at the transformation that has taken place, it motivates you to do the work that we do here.
Lucia, who had previously worked for an immigrant group, came on as our executive director and is still there. So we've had good boards throughout, very good staff, and a very committed kind of whole operation, I must say. And I'm very pleased to be associated with it.
Congratulations to the Immigrant Women's Service Organization for having made it through 25 years. Who could believe it? And I'm just so happy that we're still there. And that's it. Felicitaciones. That's it.
And it's just an absolute thrill for me to see that they've reached the milestone of their 25th anniversary, and that they're really, when you look at their history and what they've been able to provide to so many people and making Ottawa and the surrounding community a safe space for immigrant women, I think that's really profoundly wonderful, and I'm very proud to have been a part of it.
I think it's a wonderful time for us to go out and celebrate our achievements. It was, as I said earlier, it was a struggle, it was difficult. However, we have come this far, and I think it's important for us to just spend a few moments thanking those who had the vision in the beginning, thanking those who have done their part in the community to continue to raise the issue and to continue to help newcomers, immigrant women, in whatever way that they are able to. And also to set the path for the next 10, 15, 20 or 25 years.